I said before, this is our session on gender equality and youth leadership, and we're joined by Emaan Danish. She is the founder of Warriors, which is a climate education portal. And then we have Caterina Bittendorf. Catherine is an expert on marketing, sales, and she is also the voice of gender equality at COP. And her insights on her profiles are just really amazing. So I urge you all to go and read up on it. Amazing work that's been done by her. So I would like both of you to briefly introduce yourself to our audience that has joined us, and then we'll get on with the session.
All right. Should I start? Or
yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right. Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Emaan Danish Khan, and I'm the founder of Earth Warriors Pakistan, which is a free-to-use climate education portal designed for children under 16 years of age that teaches children about climate change in their own indigenous languages.
Catherine, can we hear from you?
Hi, I'm Caterina. I'm currently from Sweden. I engage a lot with Youngo, the official children and youth constituency to the UNFCCC, to make children and youth voices heard in the process. And I mainly work on gender, but also overall children and youth inclusion towards UNFCCC processes, but also in general.
Thank you, Catherine. And thank you, Emaan, for your introductions. Before we go on to the particulars of gender equality and youth leadership, I want to hear from the both of you on your reflections regarding COP29. Both of you were there. I and Emaan met a few times. I wasn't able to meet you, Catherine. I think this is the first time we're speaking, right? So I would like to hear from you your reflections about how the conference was and the outcomes, and whether the outcomes were satisfying or not. Did they meet the kind of expectations that we had before going there? So, Catherine, can we begin with you, and then we'll move to Emaan?
I think the short answer to that is no. Our expectations weren't met at all. Like when we look at climate finance, we require trillions, and now we are with 200 billions, which is like just such a joke and also kind of offense, especially to those countries and to those people who are not responsible for climate crisis. They haven't caused the problem. They're feeling the impacts and the consequences every single day, and are now left to struggle with this because the global north is not willing to pay and to take on the current sustainability. But also, if we talk about like gender in general, like civil society and those topics, in Baku we saw also like in the past years, but even more, that civil society gets cut, that we are excluded from systems, that we literally pushed out somewhere random in the venue. And that's like going against basic principles of the United Nations system, but also basic democratic principles. And further, if we then look at like gender and like the negotiations, I mean, barely agreeing on human rights language, which is basically just mentioning human rights in the text and saying that if we do climate action, it has to be according to human rights. But this is a struggle for parties, and the expectation now discussing if that's possible. I mean, that's like deeply concerning, so to say, because it really shows that climate crisis and human rights intertwined. We have to when we discuss about it, we have to do that together and saying we stand in solidarity for a clean world and fight for climate justice, and then not being able to do human rights. That's like
right. It was I think some of the really important points that you just noted down, because I think that's generally irrespective of which background delegates were there from, they all had the same concerns and they all had the same, I'd say, questions about the outcomes of COP29. So thank you, Catherine. You just highlighted really important points. Emaan, as a young leader, as a young founder who's working on climate education, what are your reflections about COP29? And not specifically in the context of youth leadership, just generally, what are your reflections about COP29?
Generally, my reflections on COP29, as you said, is, well, it was quite disappointing, especially since it was given the title of a finance COP. I think the loss and damage fund pledged was not quite enough. As you know, that Pakistan is constantly being faced by floods all the time, and we still haven't recovered from the 2022 Pakistan floods. So I think the loss and damage fund, which was pledged, was just not enough from the trillions that were promised. Even though there were protests all over COP happening, there were action zones, etc., and it was being talked on almost every pavilion on like what loss and damage funds should be committed. But honestly, I don't believe that the like in general the outcomes of the loss and damage fund, I think, were quite disappointing. Generally in COP, what even though there was a lot of youth there was like a lot of youth inclusion, I think one thing that we need to include in like other COPs is the indigenous voices, because the indigenous people, they're the most affected by climate change, and they constantly work for sustainability without even knowing about it, since it's just in their blood to do so. It's like in their traditions. So I think what we need in COPs in general, going forward, is more is like taking the indigenous voices to the bigger table and like giving them a voice to be heard at conferences like COP and to be involved in negotiations as well.
But I think if that is done, we would create these conferences more inclusive. But the problem is that not only is it a difficult process, it's they're not prioritizing those voices, because if they do, then they would have to pay up. They will have to be held accountable for it, and they will have to reduce all of these unsustainable practices that they're engaging in. So, and they don't want to do that, because though every state out there, global north or global south, they're at COP, they just they speak in such beautiful jargons, and they want to insist upon us that they are working towards climate action. They're actually not. It's just a political statement that they put forward, and that is all. So yes, if they do, if we are successful in including indigenous voices and those that are actually impacted by it, we can make a huge change. So thank you, Emaan, for those amazing insights. We're going to start the question and answer session. So based on your experiences, these questions are sort of molded in that way, and they link up to our experiences at COP29 as well. So you can talk about these issues completely irrespective of COP29, or you can connect it with it. It's up to you. But just to give a context to the audience, this is how we have shaped the questions. But again, it's all up to you. So we're going to begin with Catherine. So first, Catherine, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and then I'll move to Emaan. And after that, we're going to move to our interactive session. Where we are going to take questions from our audience, and you guys will have an open floor and will be able to answer it. And if you like to comment on the other person's insights, you're free to do that as well. All right. So, Catherine, how has COP29 been able to address the interconnectedness of climate change and gender equality? You specifically spoke about this thing on your LinkedIn profile. I want you to share those insights with our audience today as well.
Yes, so if we look at the gender negotiations and also outcomes of COP29, I think we can start off with COP29 was very much advocated and advertised, I would say, as like the finance COP. It was equally a gender COP. And there are some good things with that. We have more than 10 years work on gender. That was in the final text that was adopted by the Parliament. And it's an achievement. So it's a first step. It's a tiny first step, but it's a step. And this calls for like more women participation and meaningful participation in the negotiations, in the nationally as well as internationally, and also full equality. And it also wants that we enhance data and that we develop a roadmap and the gender action plan that will come up next year, and hopefully finalize at COP30. So I think that's the part that we can accomplish. And maybe to add on this, like just 2-3 days ago, the USA published their NDCs. So they're also in this text, they're referring for the first time to marginalized groups, LGBTQ and gender, and say it's at the core and their actions must be gender responsive, which is a huge step. First, like before, until now, Canada was the only country who mentioned LGBTQ in the NDC. And now with more countries, and especially the US, following those lead, I think that's a really meaningful step and something we can build on and now have to advocate and get other countries to do the same. When you look at the negative side of the gender negotiations, I already mentioned that human rights were a challenge, which shouldn't even be discussed at a climate conference. We are there to discuss climate action. We're not to discuss do we follow human rights. That should be a given. There's no climate justice without human rights. There's no gender equity without human rights. There's also no just transition without human rights. So I think that's something we also as young people in society have to really say and follow up with the leaders. And also those texts that we have now on gender. First, that is every word I'm mentioning diverse or diversity or anything comparable to it out of the text, which is a bit ridiculous as well. That's the core foundation about something. Also, it completely lacks in things like discrimination, sexual and reproductive health rights, gender-based violence, intersectionality of it. So there's so many things we still need to address and fight for. And I mean, we see that certain countries drop those things over and over and over again. They cut everything out. But I think right now it's very important to be like, it's completely it's there, and now we have to make sure that next year we have a substantial outcome, and an outcome that reflects the realities of women and girls, of marginalized groups, gender diverse groups, and freaking mention diversity in the text. It's not that hard.
And when you talk about the gender action plan, that I think it's on the global level,
Yes.
directly agreed upon by Conference of Parties at the Conference of Parties, right? So, what is the current progress on GAP, and what particularly does it aim at? When I mean, I understand that it is a gender action plan, but what are the specific aims? What is it? What are going to be the main aspects the GAP is going to focus on?
So for now, we just have a very, very broad framework, like the gender communication text from as the rest as well, but also it completely lacks, for example, the gender responsive fund, and also so many other things. And what we have there is we want to enhance data, because right now the impact of climate crisis on women and girls, on gender-related aspects, are completely overlooked. Also, generally on international policy level, on national level, in a lot of countries, but also in science, there's no research how climate crisis, for example, affects fertility, affects women. It's not enough covered. So good steps. We want to enhance data. We want to have equal and full, meaningful participation of women in the process. That's very important too. When we look at the picture, so let's look at the world leaders picture. So the world leaders who showed up to COP, who were there? I think it's 5 female representatives out of I don't know how many men. That needs to enhance. We need more women engaged. We need more girls and women engaged. Because we are talking about us. We need more gender diverse people engaged in the process. And there's also referred to what Emaan said about different people being engaged in the process. It's about our future. Matters that deeply affect us and our realities. We have to have a voice. And like an action plan at the moment is more like a roadmap to be established.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be a lot of pre-meetings, different submission grounds, and also SPs in June held where we see what concrete items and what parties actually want to put down in this gender action plan. So I think what we have to focus on at the moment is what we want, what's our focus, and then actively engage in the process, actively be there every single step of the way, and remind everybody that it's not just about a nice program and a nice title, but that we have to have concrete steps, if there are concrete outcomes. We have to address gender responsive violence. We have to address surveillance mechanisms. We have to address something like awareness, education, so many different things, like sexual and reproductive health, general women and diversity and discrimination and gender-based violence, all those different things that have to be mentioned there. And we have to make sure that this actually happens and that we really have a substantial outcome. I think that's a long way to go, but I think we have a lot of people that are working on that very, very and very knowledgeable. And we always have more and more support, and as loud as we can get. As children and youth, as general female experts, this will happen.
And we're looking at that again on a global level, but we've seen problems with top down approach, right? So do you think that when we're talking about global gender action plan, countries and specifically I'd say women that not those girls and women that are working towards climate action, but generally every woman, do you have do you think how can they contribute towards the successful implementation of gender action plan, and how can they utilize that roadmap towards a sustainable future?
I think on the one side, it's the general how to engage. If you're a young person and interested in engaging on international policy level towards climate, but also gender topics, I mean, it's not advertising for myself, but in Yango, we have a women in gender working group. We are working on those topics, and we'll be capacity building and then defining policy position we want to address and advocate for. We also get more into the finance aspect of it, join the finance and market working group on different other ones. And we are mandated to represent children and youth in the process up to the age of 35. So everyone who wants to work on it, ideally really invite you to come join us and join us in the fight for real climate action and justice. But there's so much more to engage on a local or national level and advocate your decision makers and politicians to it. And with this gender action plan, your country, your government agreed it was consensus-based. So your government already agreed that it is a topic that needs to be addressed, and you can build on that. You can be okay, you agreed on this and that, now do your job. So a lot of countries will finalize the NDCs in the next coming month. So it's a great time to look at them, check their draft, and be okay, this is missing. You're missing the topic completely. And a lot of people do. So go to them and be that needs to be addressed. It's a substantial topic. Here are the facts to it. That's what we want. Raise awareness about the topic. Have awareness. The more people speak about this topic, the more attention this topic gets. The more decisions have to address it. And there has to be something around it. It won't be perfect from the start. I think we all know this. But the more education and awareness we raise and strengthen others and empower others to work on it, the more movement we will create, and we will put this topic on the table, be discussed, and there's no chance to ignore it anymore.
Iman, I would want to engage you on this point. I want to hear from you because I think you and I can resonate on this fact that when it comes to this is sort of I'm trying to connect the points that were shared by Catherine, and so I want to have your insights on it. That when it comes to holding accountable government officials and telling them that you announced this in your policy, but those goals were not met. If specifically, let's say it's women empowerment or women providing women with climate resilience, or generally everyone, the entire population of Pakistan. You know how difficult it is in Pakistan to access those people. So, how are you looking forward to empowering people and if let's say equipping them with the skills and the education to access government officials, which is definitely a difficult thing in Pakistan. But how do you look at it, and what is the sort of strategy in your mind that is employed by youth and women in Pakistan to sort of access to sort of access government officials and voice their opinions to them?
Yeah, so I think the first step we need is that we need to first, like, of course, me, myself, and I think almost every woman has faced, like, some oppression in, like, especially in even climate spaces, in any space you go to. So I think the first thing we need to do is educate our children, which we really need to work on because um, it's always, like, forced into their heads like some gender roles. I think we need to reverse that cycle, and we first need to teach children about gender equality, about climate change especially. So I think we need to start from a grassroots level, and of course teach them how to like keep government officials accountable because we've been pledged like trillions by in cops, but of course there's no avail for that. So yeah, we really need to keep governments accountable more on this.
And it's sort of a question towards both of you. And I'll first hear from Iman, and then Catherine will come to you. What strategies do you see as effective for empowering women and youth in climate resilience efforts? And let's say particularly in the global north, because that is the most impacted region of our globe. And sorry, the global south, because the global north has impacted the global south the most, and then we the historical missions and their historical responsibilities towards the global south. So what strategies do you see as effective for empowering women and youth in these regions? Iman, can I hear from you first?
Strategies to empower children and youth is first of all we need to get them comfortable with the idea because as I know I've seen this a lot that women and children aren't really comfortable in doing that. So first we really need to like introduce that idea to them and we need to show them like what happens. We first need to show them about gender equality. We need to show them. We have to teach them first about climate change, and we need to introduce them to it like comfortably and in a way that they're more familiar.
All right. And Catherine, can we hear from you?
I fully agree. I think education, raising awareness for it is key. I think especially towards children, like every child has a voice, every girl has a voice, and I think we need to empower those to speak up for themselves. May it be about gender inequalities that they're facing in their daily life, may it about the impacts of climate crisis that they are feeling every day. Every child needs to know that they can speak up and that they have a voice. And if they raise this voice, they're going to be heard. And if there are enough of them who do this, they will create meaningful change. I think that's very, very important. Educating children, educating young people about those topics, and just being those are the factual basis, and giving them the tools and the skills to speak up, to go to government and decision makers and stakeholders and demand change, and also know where to find support. It's super hard to fight on this on your own. But if you have a group, if you find somebody to do it with, it's way easier to start. And I think that's also very close to my heart. I have worked the past 13 plus years on children and youth empowerment and try to like make children understand, like giving them the skills to use their voices. And I think that's very, very at the core. So I fully agree with Emaan here. I also think bringing projects to people affected, very important. And also giving people a stage to share about their realities. Because it's easy to speak and say that's what we need. But if we do not hear from the people experience it, it will just be like a top-down approach. We have to start grassroots level and hear what people want, what people need, and hear their realities and their stories.
Catherina, there's to kind of again connect with what you said. In what ways can climate policies, as you mentioned, that we have all kinds of policies, but then women need to point out to the implementers, the policymakers, that these goals have not been met. In what ways can these climate policies specifically be designed to mitigate specific vulnerabilities that are faced by only women in let's say globally?
So I think the first step was done. We recognized internationally on global stage by the United Nations and every member state that was in Baku and sit in the room that women, girls, gender diverse groups face a larger burden of climate crisis and its consequences. And now we have to transfer those sentences into action. Mm-hmm. First, we have to have climate inclusive. So everything that we do has to address those inequalities and those problems. So when we speak about climate crisis, we have to make this address it. When we speak about national adaptation, like how we adapt to climate crisis, how do we want to build resilience? There's no way like around this topic. And we have to see like on national level how this is, because something that I may like find useful from like Sweden and the global north may be completely different from what the reality or like for sure is. Because I do know from a very privileged background, like the equality standards in Sweden are quite good. I mean, it's not near perfect, but they are quite fine. And advocating doing this in Pakistan or in other countries. So I think that we will also speak about like those imbalances when it comes to like technology and education and all those transfers. If we find something useful here, it might work somewhere else. If we have education and science behind it to back up our facts and our policy demands, this is usually internationally valuable. So we have to transfer this to other nations and to other people and enable them to speak. And also to make it accessible for everybody. I think we have to then also speak about like social protection mechanisms and like generally taking like local knowledge into the topic, and that's very like diverse around the workload. But also build partnerships and networks between different like local groups, but also internationally to back each other up and to generally work on this topic. Because we won't solve gender inequalities like right down, top down. This is an international problem and it has to be solved internationally. There are a lot of things that we can do locally and nationally. Have programs, have like empowerment programs, education programs, have projects where we speak up and educate locally about something. But there are a lot of things, especially when we're speaking about like finance, which must be addressed internationally. I think there's no way around it. So I think that's very, very important and something that we should focus on also for next year to make those things go into international politics.
Absolutely, I think those are those are really important specificities that we need to include. And if if we are able to do it at a certain point in time, specifically, I'd say countries like Pakistan and countries that are facing political issues and are vulnerable to climate change at the same time. I think if we are able to do that, we can not only ensure climate security, but can on the grassroots level can ensure a secure environment for women empowerment and gender equality. So those are really important aspects we focused on. Emaan, if I may, what are some creative initiative? Because you're very young. You're, I think, 12 years old. 12 years old, if I'm not getting it wrong.
I'm 14.
14. Yes, okay. So, Emaan is our youngest, Pakistan's youngest climate activist. She's been doing great work, and I really had the pleasure of meeting her a few times. We didn't formally meet in COP28, but I did hear you speak, and I was really impressed by her, the work that she did, not only at COP28, but is still doing, and did at COP29 as well. So, Emaan, what are some creative initiatives that you have implemented through your climate education portal, where you've been engaging youth in different ways? I'd say the main project that you have of Fizza. My name is Fizza as well, and when I read your book, I was like, oh, that's my name, that's me, right there. So, what are some creative initiatives that you have implemented through your education portal and to engage youth in shaping narrative around climate action at COP29?
Yeah, so yeah, the first thing Earth Warriors basically just focuses is engaging youth in like not a textbook type of way. I believe since as a young person myself, I started Earth Warriors when I was 7 years old. So I was like, I never liked reading textbooks, just going on my desk and just staring at words for hours on ends, right? So I would have preferred like watching cartoons or like reading stories or something like that. So basically, what Earth Warriors basically does is we teach children about climate change in a fun way through cartoons, storytelling, etc. Like you mentioned, the book, and we have our own climate superhero, which is Fizza. So that's a way we engage youth. We have like puppet shows, we host, etc. And basically we like try to keep it fun. And I've also brought that many times into COP28 and COP29 because no matter what, no matter how old you grow, you still like stories, and it's a good way of engaging people and raising voices and creating awareness. So it's worked out really great for Earth Warriors since we've had many successful events where we raised awareness about the Loss and Damage Fund, we raised awareness about the indigenous voices, our youth, etc., etc. So that's how we basically do it. We try to keep it fun through stories, videos, etc., and through our portal, Earth Warriors. We have like a whole course designed. Even in the assignments that we have, it's mostly just a fun way where children can like get out there and actually do something and not just keep on staring at a computer screen. Like there are assignments where you can go out into the physical world and actually create a change. So yeah.
And how important do you think is youth participation and youth leadership, I'd say, when it comes to climate spaces? Because these people are mostly ignored. The young voices are mostly ignored. They're taken as they're kids. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know the how difficult it is and what the structured way and the systematic way of doing things is. So, how important, in your opinion, is youth leadership?
I think youth leadership is extremely important, but as you said that most of the youth in events such as these at like COP, I've heard many people saying that their voice is irrelevant because our brain is filled with quote unquote woke.
Mhm.
Um, so uh, I think we really the first thing is we need to be started taken seriously by the older generations because of course there's a thing that oh they're younger, they don't know what they're talking about, oh they'll understand when they grow up. But I think the youth is not only the future as people say, we're also the present because we are still facing all of these climate challenges. For example, I recently set up a climate lab in Naltar, which is like a space 8,000 square feet, above 8,000 meters above the sea level on like a really high peak. It's completely cut off. But the children over there, they still know that what's happening there is not natural. Naltar is faced by floods, avalanches, and all, and they've noticed the warming going up over there, even though it's a really cold area. Like, I went there in June, and there was still snow on some of the mountains. But they know that this is not natural. And even they said to me when basically we set up Earth Warriors over there that they know that this is not natural, but people aren't just listening to them. The elders aren't listening to them. So the youth voices from all across the world, the indigenous communities, whether they be in Mexico, Africa, Pakistan, they need to be heard, because over there in Naltar, I've seen such amazing young minds with great ideas. So especially what I said earlier in this live is that the indigenous voices need to be heard. And I got that idea just by going to Naltar.
I think a nexus between the indigenous knowledge and the modern knowledge is really important, because you cannot modernize every part of the world. So you need you kind of need an overlap between the two, which is really important, and rightly pointed out, Emaan. I'd like to hear from the both of you on this particular point, because young people have been participating in COPs for the past few years, and it's not just participation, but I'll call it meaningful participation, because they have been working towards change. They have brought meaningful change at these COPs. So how do the both of you envision? We'll start with Emaan and then we'll go towards Catherina. How do you envision the role of young people in influencing global leaders during COP discussions? Emaan.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand. You're breaking off a little bit. I'm not sure if it's my internet or.
I'm going to repeat myself. Let me know if I'm clear on your end. How do you envision the role of young people in influencing global leaders during COP discussions?
Okay, so I think yes, the youth has done many meaningful engagements on COP. I've seen it with my own two eyes. So we've published many reports with Youngo, the Children Youth Pavilion. I was part of many, but I think still youth is not taken really seriously, even though there are many talks. If you go to the plenaries, there are many talks about youth in the future, but we're not really in the main discussions with we're not in the main discussions with the global leaders. So I think in the next COPs we really need to go out there, because there's still there's not much youth in the big tables.
Mm-hmm. Katrina, can I hear from you?
Yes, so I fully agree. I think we were sidelined a lot. I mean, just cutting our segments out of like plenaries and such things showed this quite clearly. But also there's like a rising number of children and youth engaging, mostly in like side events, actions, and such things. And I think we have to transfer all those things that happen at COP, but like not in the negotiation rooms, inside the negotiation rooms, and make sure that we are heard. But I also want to say, kind of maybe giving a comparison, like in soccer, you just attack the person who has the ball. You're not like attacking somebody else. And meaning that we get cut out from closing plenaries, from negotiation rooms, means we have the ball. We have something to say that might influence the process majorly. There's a reason the COP presidency chose to cut out from closing plenaries, from other plenaries, multiple times, and to not listen to youth, to women, to indigenous peoples, to the other civil society representatives. And that's because we have a very, very powerful voice, and we are using this powerful voice. And I think we must continue to do this. We must continue to ask those questions and demand like high ambitions, real climate policies, and a real step forward. And I think what a lot of people already do is publishing science-based policy demands. Very powerful. We just have to advocate them first, then really bring them to the negotiators of each country and make sure that those things are getting transferred in the text. We have to raise more media and press awareness about those, and generally get those things out. It must be the number one topic that people speak on, because that's what we want for our future. I think that's super important. But we are making good progress, and now we can build on this and step up even more. And I also just want to say that what Emaan just told about what she is doing and what her organization, it's super inspiring. And I think it inspires so many more children and youth to also engage, and we're becoming more and more, and they cannot ignore us. We are so many, we are loud and clear and demanding emission reduction targets. We are demanding gender equality, just transition, and climate justice at the core. And I think that's our key advantage, that we are so many. We are the largest generation on Earth, and when we want something, we will get it sooner or later.
Soon, and not later. Soon, we're gonna get it. Since we're moving towards the last 15 hours of Earth Hour, I'd like to ask Emaan. I'd like to ask you the last question, and then we're gonna move towards our interactive session. Emaan, can you share a story from your platform that highlights a young person's innovative approach to tackling climate issues and how it could inspire action at COP30?
Yeah, so we have quite a few stories, and something that should be implemented in the protocols that I honestly haven't seen in many COPs. There was a little segment on it in COP 29, but I haven't seen much on people that are specially abled. In Melter, there's this guy, this boy, honestly, I forgot his name. Okay, so he's a bit specially able, but still he has amazing ideas on how to tackle climate change that honestly I believe that the world leaders have still not thought about. And still, his voice isn't heard even in his own school. But he, so basically in Earth Warriors, we have a lot of country leads, we have city leads, we have province leads, etc. So we made him the city lead of Melter. So and he's led many, now he's basically leading the school and the chapter of Earth Warriors Melter. So we've done many composting things with him, and we're having a few projects over there that we can grow cherry trees, because Melter is really rich in soil, but still over there's not much work on farming, etc. being done. So now we're empowering voices of children over there to do something and get them on their feet and empower them more. So, and what we're thinking is basically we also need to bring these voices to COP as well, and especially at the big table. So in COP30, what I really want to see is people with disabilities or people with special needs who are specially abled to be at the table more, and their voices being heard more, because obviously they're a bit more impacted by climate change than other people.
Yeah, I think that's really inspiring to see young kids, even though they're facing issues, to physically participate on such such things. It's so refreshing and so empowering to see that they're not losing hope. So why should we? There's so many. We're talking about a northern region, Emaan. So there are issues of communication. There are issues of accessing basic facilities, basic amenities of life. But they're still not losing hope. So again, why should we? And yeah, because we're at the end of our Earth hours, we're left with 13 minutes. I would want the both of you to give a message to young people that are watching us right now or will be watching our video when we post it after our live ends. To all of them, what is one message that you would like to give based on your personal experience that they can take insights from for their own journeys ahead? Catherina, can we hear from you? And then we'll go towards Emaan.
So I think the one message is, for me personally, to never lose hope. Keep going and do what you believe in, and use your voice. You have a voice, you're heard, and the more people you empower to work with you, the more powerful you are. And there might be dark times. There might be very disappointing nights at COP. And this is a very emotional process, but there's so many people who are there to support your ideas, your work, and together we will make the change. And we will be the change that we all want to see.
Absolutely. Emaan, can we hear from you?
Thank you. As Caterina said, never lose hope. Many people will try to bring you down, even when it's unexpected. People you won't expect to bring you down, but stay vigilant, what I'd say. But what I want to say is really every small step counts. Every small drop of rain can bring a flood. So keep doing what you're doing and never give up.
Yeah, that's inspiring. Every drop of rain brings a flood. That's if there's a flood of young leaders, young women participating at COPs and making their voices heard, then I think the what's left. What what is the problem there? But that's what we need to do. Make every drop count, and we will do that. So we have a question from the audience, and I would like to hear from both of you on this. How do we turn COP around into being effective instead of a hypocritical greenwashing platform? Yeah. Katrina, I see you smiling. I see you smiling. I think there's something huge that you want to share. Go ahead, please.
It's right to the point. It's a huge question, and I wish I would have the answer to that. I wish, but I think like COP is I don't know, a circuit on its own, and I think we don't have to cut reality here. That we also saw in the outcomes. They followed the US lead and what Global North wanted, not what Global South needs. And there's no easy solution to it. But I think if we point this out, if we get attention on those topics, it will help do the change. I also think it's not going to be easy. We can't expect this to be able to turn around. I think we have to kind of work with the system that we have at the moment, because it's still better than nothing. It has a lot of shortcomings, but it's still better than nothing. It's still better than to just hope everybody does something. And we have to remain out. We have to point out those flaws, the problems, and how unfair the system is, and how exclusive, and that it's not addressing the historical and current responsibilities, especially that Europe, the US, Canada, Australia, all those towards developing least developed countries, Pacific Island states, general AOSs, and so on. I think if we get attention to this and more people speak about it, especially with Brazil hosting next year, there might be some improvements, but the way it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be a long fight to kick also big polluters out, establish a clear conflict of interest policy to make COP more efficient in a sense. And we do know that a lot of countries, not a lot of countries, but the usual countries are blocking that. But I think if we point that out and if we continue to put them in a position where they have to justify why they are acting this way, we are on the right path. It's going to be a long way, but we're on the right path.
But then we, on the other hand, we do have the issue of greenwashing, which is being done by a lot of corporations that are funding delegations, and then those delegations then represent the interests of those corporations or MNCs or TNCs on that platform. So in turn, it is a greenwashing of COPs that is happening. So how can we prevent that from happening? It has sort of penetrated this entire system. It has made it has brought around loopholes that can be people and corporations can maneuver through. So we need to work around that. And how do you see that happening?
I think it's challenging. Like when we look at Baku, you basically saw the oil fields from the venue entrance, which is insanely like ridiculous. You saw how much of a greenwashing event this was.
Yeah.
The number of fossil fuel lobbyists was higher than the number of all negotiators from the island states combined. Like you see how big fossil fuel is in the game. No wonder when we host an oil state year after year. I mean, so it's a show. I think we can do this out like that. They are still like big corporations who invest a lot in fossil fuel, like bank companies, financial institutions who buy or like get party badges from nations to be there, while civil society struggles to even be able to attend and to get accreditation to those events. So I think there are a lot of like hierarchies in the process that we need to address. There are a lot of things that go wrong, but there also are a lot of people working on this to point this out. Like Yango and a lot of civil society like repeats intervention after intervention that we need a conflict of interest policy. UNFCCC needs to kick those fossil fuel lobbyists out. We can't have a serious climate conference if there are more people with fossil fuel interests present than people who actually want to have real climate policies. I think that's something that is key. Have to get away from one country being able to block the whole process. There were consultations on decision-making processes within the UNFCCC, also at COP29. I think if you search it up, you probably will find that countries like Russia do not want to talk about it, so they postponed it again to next year, to COP30. Because of course it's a lot of power. If it's consensus based and one country says no, it's not going anywhere. But with that we will never reach something. So we have to improve here. And honestly, it's our power as civil society is limited. Yes, we are mandated to represent voices there of different civil society groups, including children and youth in the process. And we can be uncomfortable and point it out over and over. But there must be governments to pick this up. There must be the UN to pick this up and actively work on it. And I think we are quite away from doing this. It's still a lot of greenwashing. We saw it in the pavilion. We saw who attends COP. And it's quite a privileged event. I think that's very, very clear. But I think that can't stop us and shouldn't stop us from being there and being loud and repeating this over and over, and not just only at COP, but also all the months to it, because there are a lot of free sessions. They are like the secondary bodies, which is basically the preparation, the big conference I had, and which is happening in June in Bonn, Germany. And there are not as many fossil fuel lobbyists, but there are still people influencing the process with their own interests, not interest of climate action. I think we need to address this and need to raise awareness that this is happening and to combat it and to get parties to speak up about it. Because it's in the end a party-driven process. So if enough countries say something about it, they have to act upon it and they have to implement like safeguarding measures for this process.
Absolutely. Emaan, can I hear from you on the same question? Because that's one of the most interesting questions. Because of lack of time, we cannot take too much questions. Though we have a lot in the pipeline, but we're just gonna stick to this one because this is the most interesting, relevant one. How do we turn COP around into being effective instead of a hypocritical greenwashing platform?
Yes, as Catherine said, I also wish I had a straight answer for that, but honestly, I don't think it's in the hands of us. But we really need to urge the UNFCCC to like kick the greenwashers, of course, out. If you've been to the green zone in COP29 Baku. It was literally nicknamed the greenwashing zone because that's literally all it was. What I've noticed, but in UAE, the COP28 that happened in UAE, there were um, tech. There were still some organizations that were working for climate change, mostly around tech, but I don't think it's in the hands for us, but as Catherine said, we really need to raise our voices about this change. But honestly, it won't change unless the UNFCCC decides to do it.
Absolutely. Since we have, we're left with only 2 minutes to conclude our Earth Hour, I would like to take this time to thank the both of you for joining us and giving your insights on the issue of gender equality and youth leadership. It was, an, I'd say, for me, it was an amazing gathering, and your insights have shaped my brain chemistry, and I think I'm going to look at things more differently now. As hearing from a youth leader and hearing from a representative who has been working towards gender equality, it was amazing hearing you both talk about COP29 and generally both of these issues. So thank you once again for joining us, and thank you the audience that was here. It was a pleasure to have you all. And though we could not take your questions, but we are going to be taking them on next Sunday, 6 p.m. on our Earth Hour Live. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care, everyone.